Maelzel's Chess Player by Edgar Allan Poe. Perhaps no exhibition of the kind has ever elicited so general attention as the chess player of Maelzel. Wherever seen, it has been an object of intense curiosity to all persons who think, yet the question of its modus operandi is still undetermined. Nothing has been written on this topic which can be considered as decisive. And accordingly, we find everywhere men of mechanical genius, of great general acuteness and discriminative understanding, who make no scruple in pronouncing the automaton a pure machine, unconnected with human agency in its movements, and consequently, beyond all comparison, the most astonishing of the inventions of mankind. And such it would undoubtedly be, were they right in their supposition. Assuming this hypothesis, it would be grossly absurd to compare with the chess player any similar thing of either modern or ancient days. Yet there have been many and wonderful automata. In Brewster's letters on natural magic, we have an account of the most remarkable among these may be mentioned, as having beyond doubt existed. Firstly, the coach invented by M. Camus for the amusement of Louis XIV when a child. A table, about 4 feet square, was introduced into the room appropriated for the exhibition. Upon this table was placed a carriage, 6 inches in length, made of wood, and drawn by 2 horses of the same material. One window being down, a lady was seen on the back seat. A coachman held the reins on the box, and a footman and page were in their places behind. And Camus now touched a spring, whereupon the coachman smacked his whip, and the horses proceeded in a natural manner, along the edge of the table, drawing after them the carriage. Having gone as far as possible in this direction, a sudden turn was made to the left, and the vehicle was driven at right angles to its former course, and so closely along the edge of the table. In this way, the coach proceeded until it arrived opposite the chair of the young prince. It then stopped. The page descended and opened the door. The lady alighted and presented a petition to her sovereign. She then re-entered. The page put up the steps, closed the door, and resumed his station. The coachman whipped his horses, and the carriage was driven back to its original position. The magician of M. Maelzel is also worthy of notice. We copy the following account of it from the letters before mentioned of Dr. B., who derived his information principally from the Edinburgh Encyclopedia. One of the most popular pieces of mechanism which we have seen is the magician constructed by M. Maelzel. For the purpose of answering certain given questions, a figure dressed like a magician appears seated at the bottom of a wall, holding a wand in one hand and a book in the other. A number of questions, ready prepared, are inscribed on oval medallions, and the spectator takes any of these he chooses into which he wishes an answer, and having placed it in a drawer ready to receive it, the drawer shuts with a spring till the answer is returned. The magician then arises from a seat, bows his head, describes circles and his wand, and consulting the book as if in deep thought, he lifts it towards his face. Having thus appeared to ponder over the proposed question, he raises his wand, and striking with it the wall above his head, 2 folding doors fly open, and display an appropriate answer to the question. The doors again close, the magician resumes his original position, and the drawer opens to return the medallion. There are 20 of these medallions, all containing different questions to which the magician returns the most suitable and striking answers. The medallions are thin plates of brass of an elliptical form exactly resembling each other. Some of the medallions have a question inscribed on each side, both of which the magician answered in succession. If the drawer is shut without a medallion being put into it, the magician rises, consults his book, shakes his head, and resumes his seat. The folding doors remain shut, and the drawer is returned empty. If two medallions are put into the drawer together, an answer is returned only to the lower one. When the machinery is wound up, the movements continue about an hour, during which time about 50 questions may be answered. The inventor stated that the machines by which the different medallions acted upon the machinery. The inventor stated that the means by which the different medallions acted upon the machinery so as to produce the proper answers to the questions which they contained were extremely simple. The duck of Valkenson was still more remarkable. It was of the size of life and so perfect an imitation of the living animal that all the spectators were deceived. It executed, says Brewster, all the natural movements and gestures. It ate and drank with avidity and performed all the quick motions of the head and throat which are peculiar to the duck, and like it muddled the water which it drank with its bill. It produced all the sound of quacking in the most natural manner. In the anatomical structure, the artist exhibited the highest skill. Every bone in the real duck had its representative in the automaton, and its wings were anatomically exact. Every cavity, apophysis, and curvature was imitated, and each bone executed its proper movements. When corn was thrown down before it, the duck stretched out its neck to pick it up, swallowed, and digested it. But if these machines were ingenious, what shall we think of the calculating machines of Mr. Babbage? What shall we think of an engine of wood and metal which can not only compute astronomical and navigation tables to any given extent, but render the exactitude of its operations mathematically certain through its power of correcting its possible errors? What shall we think of a machine which can not only accomplish all this, but actually print off its elaborate results, when obtained without the slightest intervention of the intellect of man? It will perhaps be said in reply that a machine such as we have described is altogether above comparison with the chess player of Maelzel. By no means, it is altogether beneath it. That is to say, provided we assume what should never for a moment be assumed, that the chess player is a pure machine, and performs its operations without any immediate human agency. Arithmetical or algebraical calculations are, from their very nature, fixed and determinate. Certain data being given, certain results necessarily and inevitably follow. These results have dependence upon nothing, and are influenced by nothing but the data originally given. And the question to be solved proceeds, or should proceed, to its final determination by a succession of unerring steps, liable to no change and subject to no modification. This being the case, we can without difficulty conceive the possibility of so arranging a piece of mechanism that upon starting it in accordance with the data of the question to be solved, it should continue its movements regularly, progressively, and undeviatingly towards their required solution, since these movements, however complex, are never imagined to be otherwise than finite and determinate. But the case is widely different with the chess player. With him, there is no determinate progression. No one move in chess necessarily follows upon any other. From no particular disposition of the men at one period of a game can we predicate their disposition at a different period. Let us place the first move in a game of chess in juxtaposition with the data of an algebraical question, and the great difference will be immediately perceived. From the latter, from the data, the second step of the question, dependent thereupon, inevitably follows. It is modeled by the data. It must be thus and not otherwise. But from the first move in the game of chess, no special second move follows of necessity, and that algebraical question, as it proceeds towards solution, the certainty of its operations remains altogether unimpaired, the second step having been a consequence of the data. The third step is equally a consequence of the second, altogether unimpaired. The third step is equally a consequence of the second, the fourth of the third, the fifth of the fourth, and so on, and not possibly otherwise to the end. But in proportion to the progress made in a game of chess is the uncertainty of each ensuing move. A few moves having been made, no step is certain. Different spectators of the game would advise different moves. All is then dependent upon the variable judgment of the players. Now, even granting what should not be granted, that the movements of the automaton chess player were in themselves determinate. They would be necessarily interrupted and disarranged by the indeterminate will of his antagonist. There is then no analogy whatever between the operations of the chess player and those of the calculating machine of Mr. Babbage. And if we choose to call the former a pure machine, we must be prepared to admit that it is, beyond all comparison, the most wonderful of the inventions of mankind. Its original projector, however, Baron Kempelen, had no scruple in declaring it to be a very ordinary piece of mechanism, a bagatelle, whose effects appeared so marvelous only from the boldness of the conception and the fortunate choice of the methods adopted for promoting the illusion. But it is needless to dwell upon this point. It is quite certain that the operations of the automaton are regulated by mind and by nothing else. Indeed, the matter is susceptible of a mathematical demonstration a priori. The only question, then, is of the manner in which human agency is brought to bear. Before entering upon this subject, it would be as well to give a brief history and description of the chess player for the benefit of such of our readers as may never have had an opportunity of witnessing Mr. Maelzel's exhibition. The automaton chess player was invented in 1769 by Baron Kempelen, a nobleman of Pressburg in Hungary, who afterwards disposed of it, together with the secret of its operations, to its present possessor. Soon after its completion, it was exhibited in Pressburg, Paris, Vienna, and other continental cities. In 1783 and 1784, it was taken to London by Mr. Maelzel. Of late years, it has visited the principal towns in the United States. Wherever seen, the most intense curiosity was excited by its appearance, and numerous have been the attempts by men of all classes to fathom the mystery of its evolutions. The cut above gives a tolerable representation of the figure as seen by the citizens of Richmond a few weeks ago. The right arm, however, should lie more at length upon the box. A chessboard should appear upon it, and the cushion should not be seen while the pipe is held. Some immaterial alterations have been made in the costume of the player since it came into the possession of Maelzel. The plume, for example, was not originally worn. At the hour appointed for exhibition, a curtain is withdrawn, or doors are thrown open, and the machine rolled to within about 12 feet of the nearest of the spectators, between whom and it, the machine, a rope is stretched. A figure is seen, habited as a Turk, and seated, with its legs crossed, at a large box, apparently of maple wood, which serves it as a table. The exhibitor will, if requested, roll the machine to any portion of the room, suffer it to remain altogether on any designated spot, or even shift its location repeatedly during the progress of a game. The bottom of the box is elevated considerably above the floor by means of the casters or brazen rollers on which it moves, a clear view of the surface immediately beneath the automaton being thus afforded to the spectators. The chair on which the figure sits is affixed permanently to the box. On the top of this latter is a chessboard, also permanently affixed. The right arm of the chess player is extended at full length before him, at right angles with his body, and lying in an apparently careless position by the sides of the board. The back of the hand is upwards. The board itself is 18 inches square. The left arm of the figure is bent at the elbow, and in the left hand is a pipe. A green drapery conceals the back of the Turk and falls partially over the front of both shoulders. To judge from the external appearance of the box, it is divided into 5 compartments, 3 cupboards of equal dimensions, and 2 drawers occupying the portion of the chest lying beneath the cupboards. The foregoing observations apply to the appearance of the automaton upon its first introduction into the presence of the spectators.